Weapons was one of the most overhyped piece of trash movies that I've ever spent money on. Weapons was one of the most hyped up horror movies I've seen in a long time. In fact, the last time a horror movie with this much hype around it came to theaters, it was Longlegs in 2023, so I guess not that long ago. But now that it's been a few months since its release, Weapons has really retained a lot of its praise that it was first getting, while Longlegs had more or less lost its praise and gone into the overhyped conversations. Now, I'm sure the comments will prove me wrong on this one, and a lot of people will say that Weapons 2 was overrated, but I've made my thoughts known on this movie already, and I absolutely loved it. The blend of different perspectives unraveling the mystery and how these different people crossed paths was really captivating to see unfold. The history and lore behind its villain and the conversations that's brought up, and of course, a lot of the questions behind the story, its themes, and what this floating gun in the sky really meant. The internet has gone rampant with its theories, a lot of them being brought to Zach Cregger himself, and while the internet's theories are good, Zach has mostly denied each and every one of them. So it begs the question, is there more to Weapons than we think, or did Zach just set out to make a captivating and entertaining horror movie? That's what I'm going to discuss in this video, along with the mystery of the movie, the things that I loved, didn't love, and everything in between. So spread your arms out and run into the night, enjoy watching the most incompetent police work you've ever seen in your life, and let's theorize our way into the story of Weapons. So the first thing I want to go over in this movie is the mystery itself. If you've been around the channel, you'll know that I am a big fan of mysteries. It's my favorite genre. It's the reason why I was so personally excited for this movie. But it's also with movies like this that I understand why people don't like mysteries. Right from the beginning, there's a change to the mystery that the marketing didn't spoil, and that's the fact that not all of the kids in the class were missing. There was actually one kid who did make it to school that day. So right away, especially with this being hidden in the marketing, we know that Alex in some way must either be responsible or connected to all these kids going missing. There's also this voiceover from a child who narrates what happens, and it goes on for quite a while. For a minute, I actually thought that maybe this entire movie would be narrated by this child, but it doesn't happen. The narration does come back in the end, and I'll get to that later on. Like a lot of mystery movies, the beginning is filled with a lot of hints towards the answer, but also a lot of red herrings. We start out with Justine's perspective, and she gets a mysterious phone call in the liquor store, a threatening knock on her front door, and even her car vandalized with the word witch in red paint. At the beginning, we don't know if she's guilty or not. Sure, she doesn't seem like she's guilty, but we also understand the parents and why they're saying what they're saying and why she's the first person to blame. We even get a little bit of information to make us doubt Miss Gandy about how she's been reprimanded before for inappropriate conduct with a student, giving that student a ride home, which is not allowed when you're their teacher. We even see this inappropriate conduct firsthand when she follows Alex home and spies into his house, seeing his parents sitting on the couch like statues. There's some more misdirection with her hearing noises in her house, and then a quick glimpse at this clown person on the ceiling, a shot that really feels out of nowhere the first time you see the movie. But overall, unless this movie was going the unreliable narrator route, we can cross Miss Gandy off our list of suspects, especially when it comes to seeing Alex's house all taped up, and even more later on when we see the mom walk out of the house like she's being puppeteered and snap a lock of her hair. When we switch to Archer's perspective, we get the first answer of this movie, who wrote the word witch on her car, and while the story doesn't explicitly spoon feed us this answer, we can assume it's Archer, given he had the means and motivation to do so. But then Archer has this dream, and it leads to one of the most confusing shots of the movie, an AR-15 above this house with a clock reading 2:17 on the side of it. And this is a shot I'll certainly talk about later, but I thought this would definitely lead to something else in the movie. There's the whole Chekhov's gun theory, but this ultimately doesn't lead to anything else in the entire movie. But more interestingly, Archer sees that same clown demon face that Justine saw in her house. So he really takes matters into his own hands and does some police work on his own since the actual police aren't getting anywhere. And he makes this connection of where the kids were running off to, or at least the direction that they were going. Now, this scene makes the cops feel especially incompetent, which is a major theme of this movie, and I'll get to that, but this is like unrealistically incompetent. If I had a critique for this movie, it's that I feel like this should have been a montage sequence with him making many different lines to where all the kids were headed. At least this scene gives us the Justin Long cameo, but overall, Archer's section of the movie starts the ball rolling on actually finding the kids. And it ends off on an even bigger question, and that's why Marcus ran with his arms out and started attacking Justine, and overall just what happened to him. We get an answer, start to feel like we're getting somewhere, and then drop an even bigger mystery. When we get to Paul's perspective, the mystery kinda pauses for a while, which is ironic since he's a police officer and you'd think he'd be the one out there trying to solve the case, but instead he's busting drug addicts, or actually not busting them. There was that cliffhanger in Archer's point of view, so they're letting the questions mellow with the audience while moving forward with some of the personal stakes to these characters and seeing the opposite point of view that we saw with Justine. James's whole section kind of disarms the audience. This is not really a character that we even expected to see a point of view from. He's really only been in the background of scenes and moments before this. He has absolutely nothing to do with the central mystery, which is exactly why he's the right person to actually solve the mystery of where the kids are. And this is what I really like about the mystery of this movie. We have point A, the kids going missing in the middle of the night, and point Z, where the kids are. But we still don't have points B to Y when it comes to solving why all of this actually happened. And those answers don't come from James. In fact, we only get some more questions with actually seeing the parents and some wounds on their face, a thump coming from upstairs, and seeing that same clown demon from earlier. When Paul finds him and he brings him to find the kids, something in that house changes Paul. So this goes to tell us more of what we already knew. There's something up with Alex's house, that's where the kids are, but Alex must be involved in this whole mystery in some way, shape, or form. With Marcus's point of view, we finally get some of the big answers. He meets this woman Gladys, who looks eerily similar to this person that the others have been seeing in their dreams and around town, and this is where the movie starts to lose people. And this is why mystery is so tricky as a genre. We've had all these questions up to this point. What's going on at the house? Why did the kids leave with their arms outstretched? Why did Marcus look like that and attack Justine? And the answer to all of this essentially boils down to magic. Might seem obvious in retrospect, it also might turn some people away, especially those who wanted a more grounded story. Now, I'm not entirely sure who went into this movie expecting a grounded story. It seemed obvious even from the marketing that there would be some kind of supernatural element, but this is the same kind of thing that I said in my video about Longlegs. You can have all these different threads of mystery that intrigue people, but if they don't like the answer, then odds are they're not going to like the story in general. And this is really the same for all mysteries, and most of the time, since all of the answers to mystery stories have kind of been done to some extent or another, you end up with something that's either been done before, something that's so convoluted that you would have never even been able to guess it in the first place, or something that comes out of left field. And I think that third option is the most popular with mystery stories nowadays, but it's also the option that fills people with disappointment if the answer isn't what they wanted it to be. So this movie tries to leave Gladys, who she is, and her history a bit of a mystery itself, because the more you explain the monster, or the more you see it, the less scary it is. We don't ever see the full extent of Gladys's powers. How did she turn Alex's parents and the kids into these comatose-like statues? Why does she need the personal belongings of people to take them over? This movie gives enough hints towards Gladys's backstory and her powers without ever actually revealing too much, so that way it keeps the audience guessing. But again, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because some people watch or read mystery stories to find out all the answers, and when we don't get those, it'll leave some people unsatisfied. Alex's whole point of view serves as the rest of the answers and the conclusion of the story. We see how Gladys got the children, why they weren't found, and some of this is a bit muddy, like how the cops don't come back for another check and they don't care to speak with the parents or even just figure out what happened to them. There's a bit of a logic flaw here, but I suppose if you don't question things too hard, then it all makes sense. It's easy to poke holes in this final act, like how Alex is by himself getting dozens of cans of soup and it doesn't raise any red flags in the town when this is the last kid remaining from all the kids who disappeared. There's all these ring cameras to get info from, but none of the houses on Alex's street had ring cameras apparently. And yeah, it's a bit disappointing for there to be this level of plot holes or plot inconsistencies, but I ultimately found the ending to be satisfying, if not a bit tonally uneven. So this movie obviously bounces around from many different characters and their point of views. It's one of my favorite things about this movie. The structure and seeing these many different characters and how they respond to this situation and mystery. And because of this structure and how non-linear it is, I was initially gonna try and have a big segment of this video going over the chronological timeline, but according to Zach Kreger himself, the timeline doesn't actually make sense.
I did try and do a calendar where I was trying to exactly pinpoint like how these events coincided, and it's impossible. They don't. You know, there are major plot holes all over this. Like the cop dragging the guy in, and then the cop car's there all day, and so the little kid doesn't see the cop car until he comes home from school. It's like, how's that possible? It doesn't work. It doesn't add up.
But each character that we see in their point of view, each has an internal conflict and an external conflict, something that all great characters have, and I think this was a distinct point that Zach Kreger made when creating these characters. Justine is an alcoholic, the tragedy and weight of the situation forcing her to turn to the bottle, even when she has explicit instructions to go right home. It even gets her in a bad situation with Paul and his girlfriend coming between them and causing Paul to break his sobriety. This is her internal conflict, and it's something that doesn't get fixed by the end of the story, a trend you'll see in all these characters. Her external conflict is, of course, being in danger from the rest of the town who blames her for the disappearance of the children, as well as trying to take it upon herself to solve what happened. Archer isn't a very loving father. In his dream, he apologizes to Matthew for not saying "I love you" enough because he does feel it, he just can't bring himself to say it. This has clear implications about Archer's background. We see this manifest in Matthew by being a bully to Alex in school, and this has a lot of themes and conversations about generational trauma. His external conflict is, of course, all about trying to find his son, and also how this is affecting his concentration and seemingly hours at his construction job, and driving him and his wife further apart from each other. Paul is also an alcoholic, albeit a recovering one, though this is only part of his internal conflict. The other is staying faithful in his relationship. When we first see Paul, he tells Justine that he and Donna aren't together anymore. Though when we see his own point of view, they are very much together, she's just out of town. Donna even encourages him to go to a meeting, something he skips in order to see Justine. His external conflict, while you'd think it would be trying to find all these missing kids, it's not, and it's actually his ineptitude at his job and his handling of James, something that takes top priority for him over finding these children. James is the main comedic relief of the movie, therefore his conflicts kind of match that same tone. His inner conflict is simply that he's out of drugs and needs to find a way to get more, while his external conflict is that he needs to find a way to get the money for finding the kids without actually going to the police station. Marcus is the second shortest point of view character sequence in this movie, so his internal conflict in the scenes that we see him in is just simply that he wants a moment of peace and quiet. He's interrupted by a parent meeting with Gladys, and then he's interrupted by her again at his own home when he just sits down. His external conflict is, of course, all the missing kids, people looking at him for answers, and trying to keep the peace between the parents, and stopping Justine on whatever quest she's on. Marcus is probably the character we learn the least about throughout the film, so his motivations aren't nearly as complex as the others. Meanwhile, Alex probably has the most complex and the most obvious set of conflicts. Internally, he knows everything that's going on with his classmates and his parents, but he can't speak up about any of it out of fear of retaliation on his parents. And externally, there's Gladys. She'll hurt his parents, him, his classmates, and of course, he's also the one responsible for feeding everybody too. That's a big conflict because I have no clue how he's paying for all this. So throughout all these point of views, and here's the times, give or take a few seconds or maybe like a minute since I wasn't keeping track of the seconds, but this is how much time we spend with each person and each point of view, and one of the common things featured in all of these perspectives is how incompetent the police are in this town. Now, I've seen a lot of comments online talking about this, calling it a plot hole, and yeah, the more you look into it, the less any of this makes sense. But the story very purposefully makes this police department inept at their jobs. Inept to the point it breaks your immersion? Yeah, maybe, but it was done purposefully. Our first interaction with the police in this entire movie is Justine going to the station because of the vandalization of her car. The officer can't take the paint off and tells her the only thing he can do is file a report. And this all might be true and very realistic, but it was definitely an indication of things to come. Paul tells Justine that nobody in town blames her and she doesn't have to worry, but as we can clearly tell with Archer, this isn't true. In fact, she's very much in danger, another indication that Paul doesn't have the instincts of a good police officer. He tells her that things are coming along slowly at the station, but when we see his point of view, things aren't coming along slowly. Nothing is happening at all. There is no sense of urgency whatsoever, and maybe it's because this is 30 days after the kids have disappeared. We did see in the beginning montage that there was clearly some urgency, but that has clearly gone a month into the investigation. The chief is annoyed at Archer coming in and asking questions, even though he says if the roles were reversed, he'd be doing the same thing. And of course, Paul is just overall not a great guy, and especially not a great police officer. He's unfaithful to a girl who seemingly just wants what's best for him. He takes his anger out on James, which I would say is completely warranted if he weren't a police officer. He tells his chief, aka his girlfriend's father, about what happened, and the first place his mind goes to is trying to cover it up or just weather the storm. When Paul's consequences arrive at the door, he goes after James, disconnecting his camera and everything. And I already mentioned earlier how the detectives don't really do their due diligence at Alex's house or really question anything about Gladys. So is this movie anti-cop? Is this whole movie just about the corrupt justice system? Well, maybe, but I'll get to that in a bit. So now I'm going to go over all the different hidden messages and themes of the movie, and this is really where the internet has given this movie a whole second life, because it seems like everybody who watches this movie takes something different out of it. So I'm going to go over some of those themes and really theories before I get into my own. There's going to be some sensitive subject matter here, so I'm also going to put a content warning now. Even just from the trailers, a lot of people figured this movie was going to be a message about gun violence in America, specifically in schools. And this theory fits eerily well into this movie. All the children in the class are gone except for one. The one kid who was bullied by his classmates. The bully of this class, quite literally, has a thematic target above his house in Archer's dream, and while all the kids are found at the end of the movie, not all of them are talking, and even if they are, they're changed forever. The community is at all times scared, angry, riddled with grief, and all of this lines up with themes of gun violence and what it does to a community. There's also the significance of 217, which a lot have theorized is about the 217 votes needed in the House of Representatives to ban assault weapons in 2022, which would also make this image make much more sense. But the reality is, Kreger didn't intend any of this.
What's the significance of 217 to you?
There's none.
It's just a random number?
Yeah.
He didn't intend for this movie to be a message about gun violence in America, but he's also not saying it can't be about that. He's very open to hearing everybody else's interpretations, or for other people to take their messages with them as they see fit. The gun above the house, even he says he doesn't know what it's about, which I don't really buy. But again, he says that everybody's gonna have their own interpretation of that scene, and he welcomes all those conversations. Personally, I look at this film and think about how the whole system is broken. Justine can't look after kids the way that she wants to because it's inappropriate to drive them home, and it is, even though her intentions are good. The justice system and police don't do their job effectively or properly, leading other people to try and pick up the slack. But those other people have their problems as well. Archer isn't a loving father towards his son, which causes him to lash out and bully other kids. When people do find answers, they care more about the money and reward to feed their own bad habits than the well-being of these kids. Marcus threatens to call CPS, but that process takes so long, or it's not taken seriously enough, that it allows terrible things to happen in between. This whole story is about how people have different things going on in their lives and how that can affect how they handle or process tragedies in their life. I think it's also a commentary on society as a whole and the systems we've built up to keep us in check and how they can fail us when tragedy strikes. To Zach himself, he wrote Weapons as a way to deal with a tragedy in his own life and about how alcoholism has affected him and his family in his lifetime. Do I really think a lot of these other broader conversations weren't intentional? No, I think a lot of the themes and messages were very intentional, but Zach is one of those filmmakers who isn't going to tell you you're wrong about a theme or a message of a story if you think it's about one thing or another. If you think this is a commentary on gun violence or the police in America, you're welcome to think that. If you watched this movie because it had an interesting premise and you wanted to get a few frights and thrills and uncover a mystery, guess what? You are just as right as the next person who thinks this movie is about how having 7 hot dogs in one sitting is bad for your health. So on a bit of a lighter note, let's go over some theories regarding this movie, mostly about Gladys the Witch. Like I said earlier, a lot of the things about Gladys are mysterious, but there are enough hints that we can guess quite a few things about her and her past. The biggest thing I see going around is people talking about her slip-up when talking about consumption. She tells Marcus that Alex's parents have a touch of consumption, and Marcus has no clue what she's talking about, but consumption is what they called tuberculosis back at the turn of the 20th century. This one line of dialogue gives us the impression that Gladys is much older than she appears, and she still appears pretty old. We have to take into consideration how Gladys is when we first see her from Alex's perspective. A frail old woman needing help to walk and even just lying limp in the bed when Alex sees her in the bedroom. But when Alex returns home, Gladys is up and about, and his parents are in the beginning stages of their comatose-like state. This is truly one of the scarier moments in the film to me, from seeing Alex's parents up and moving around to barely being able to speak or move the next time he sees them. We don't know what Gladys has done to them, but we do know that she is essentially feeding off of their life force. We also know that just the two of them aren't enough, and this is where the children come into play. We also get a few hints that Gladys isn't really Gladys at all. Her real name, we don't know, but when Alex's dad tells Alex that his mom's Aunt Gladys is coming, Alex objects, saying he doesn't know her, and his dad says, "Yeah, I don't either, and I don't think your mom really knows her either." Later on, the parents are arguing, saying that they haven't seen her in over 15 years, and she didn't even come to their wedding. When I watched this, I took this as this witch must have sometime over the past 15 years taken over the role of Gladys, using whatever life force she had left to live before she needed to reach out and get help from other family members. I also think this is where her whole outfit comes from. Perhaps the real Gladys used this red wig and colorful sweaters, so that part just came with this new identity. I'd also venture a guess that this isn't the first time Gladys, or whatever her real name is, has used other people and other families in order to live longer, especially if she has been around since the turn of the 20th century. A lot of this is unknown, purposefully so, and maybe we will end up getting that Gladys prequel movie to explain all this further, since this movie did so well at the box office. And while we see a bit of her witchy powers and how they work with the twigs of the tree and people's possessions and hair, there's a great deal that we don't see. Like what she did to Alex's parents, this makeshift cauldron and how this works, and what else she's actually capable of. At one point she tells Alex that if she wants to, she can make his parents eat each other, bragging like it's something she's done before. One of these powers, I believe, is to haunt or infect all those she encounters. And what I mean by this is she becomes a parasite to the community. Several times throughout the movie, we see or hear mentions of parasites. Miss Gandy is talking about parasites in her class, it's written on the board in her dream sequence, it's on the TV at Marcus's house, and of course, we see Gladys pop up in 3 different point of views. There's the first with Justine, the second with Archer, and the third with James. I think she's able to infiltrate all these people's lives because of the connections they have with the children. Maybe this is a purposeful infection, or maybe it's just a sort of side effect that Gladys has due to her witch powers. Or who knows, maybe this was just an easy way to create some scares in the film. Overall, Weapons isn't a very great horror movie. Are there frightening moments? Yes, there are. But there's also a lot of moments of comedy, sadness, action, tension, mystery, and just about anything else you can imagine. If you're going into this film expecting something that'll keep you up at night, you'll probably end up being disappointed. But if you went into this film expecting to unravel a mystery and see how different people react to this mystery, then you'll probably end up being satisfied. Despite some of its bigger plot holes or inconsistencies, Weapons has a bit of everything that I love. A sprawling, small-town mystery told through many different points of view, great characters, writing, music, and it is definitely a bias, but these kinds of stories are always appealing to me, even if what I expected the movie to be wasn't what I saw. It's definitely my favorite movie of the year so far, and I cannot wait to see how Zach Cregger takes on Resident Evil. So I'm going to give Weapons a 9.4 out of 10. What are your thoughts on Weapons? Let me know your thoughts, interpretations, and theories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more stuff like this. Special thanks to all my channel members, you guys are the best, and I'll see you all in the next one. Oh, and shout out to my friend Michael Johnson. He worked on this movie, and definitely the dimming of this movie was the best part of it.